experience of the National Assembly operations. I'm being joined by a former federal lawmaker and senior advocate of Nigeria, Honorable West Idahosa is live for us here in our studio. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate your time tonight, but give us an understanding. Has the Senate done anything wrong against Senator Akpoti Uduaghan?
Well, to start with, I think that they have not just wronged Uduaghan, they've wronged Nigeria. The reason is simple. We all know that a few days ago, maybe 2 days ago or so, the court order was served on the Senate of Nigeria. The committee in charge of ethics and so on and so forth. And that there was proof of service. I mean, this was flying on the social media and everyone saw it. They got a substituted order to serve by on the Senate through the office of the clerk. This was done. And then, in spite of this, you didn't sit down, you didn't rush a committee report, and then the person who is accused and who was likely to suffer from a suspension order was not even present. And so, in one breath, there was no fair hearing. You never heard the other side, in line with the provisions of the Constitution, Section 36. In the other breath, you disobeyed flagrantly a court order, and then you turn around to say, oh, the judiciary is not strong enough, the judiciary should improve, when we are the very ones, by this behavior, undermining judicial institutions in this country. Honestly, if I were the judge and the appropriate applications are made before me, I will go very far to make that point strong. Now let's come back to the rules. They made so much noise about the rules. We wrote these rules.
Rule 60, Rule 40, we reviewed, Rule 20. There are a few sections of...
We reviewed the rules in 1999. I was the first to lay down the reviewed rules. It was what I laid and I sent to the Senate for them to use. It's not changed. They've just changed, increased committees, a few here and there. Now, the Senate President allocates the seat. The dispute arose from the allocation of seat. Now, once it is the Senate President that allocates a seat and a senator complains about a right to a seat, it's a privilege because the right to be in the Senate is by election and a certificate of return. Do not forget, you and I cannot go there. So once he raises that point, it is a duty under Order 10, the famous Order 10 she was shouting about, of the presiding officer to have suspended all other matters. I consider that a very serious issue and taking her complaint and make a formal ruling. But if you watch the proceedings on that day, as the distinguished senator was shouting Order 10, Order 10, I already heard the presiding officer talking about prepare her for suspension. Review the tape, we've seen it. You were already preparing her for suspension even before you...
So was it fake a complaint?
Oh yeah, it was completely...
They decided our fate even long before the ethics committee was even...
It was predetermined. And then beyond that, the question was, at the time they went to court, the issue was that there was a thinking, a suspicion that she might be suspended. That was why she went to court. If you don't stop them, they will do it. And then they did it in spite of receiving the order. Now, I said to them, they were wrong. Section 4, subsection 8 of the Constitution is clear. In the conduct of its legislative powers and duties, their conduct shall be subject to the judiciary.
So you can actually, another arm of government can stop the activities of another arm of government.
Look, can I just take it briefly?
So the judiciary, the court can stop the activities that goes on in the chamber. I imagine that the activities within the chamber, there is some level of immunity to the procedure and the activities of lawmakers within the chamber.
As long as the activities do not obstruct the due process of law. I mean, once the Senate is in session, it is carrying out legislative business. Whether it is about a seat, whether it's about a breach of privilege, whether it is about passing a law, whether it's about passing a motion, it's all brought down legislative privilege. And so when the Constitution of Nigeria says that the National Assembly's duties shall be subject to the jurisdiction of the courts, it means it. And that's why they run to court each time they are suspended. Chinda was there. Ndume was there.
And I was going to reference the case of Omar Agege. He was a it was a rested case in the court.
Yes.
The case of Aline Dume. They all went to court.
Dino Melaye.
Dino Melaye.
Yes.
These are cases that have been decided by our
Correct.
court. In that case, there is an underlying factor that the courts
have talked about.
For
example, most courts are of the view that you can't suspend a sitting senator or lawmaker of any legislative body for more than 14 days, interpreting the Legislative Powers and Privileges Act.
But so there is an establishment that the Senate or the National Assembly, when there is a quorum and there is a sitting, can suspend one of their own.
Definitely.
By their own rules.
Definitely.
But in the court, as at the famous case of Senator Omo Agege,
yes,
that you cannot suspend for more than 14 days.
Correct. And not only that, you can also not suspend without hearing the other party. That's a violation.
Nemo Judas
in Kazaswa. You know that because the Senate President who allocates the seat and which was the course of action in all of this.
But Senator Uduaghan, Akpoti Uduaghan did not make herself available to the Ethics Committee.
Well, the point will be whether or not she was in court, because I understand she filed an action and she was probably present in court. So it will also depend whether there was a proving means of proof of service on her. Because if you have a fear about you being endangered by a given institution and you approach the appropriate institution for redress, you are most likely to pursue the processes to the attention of the executing institution.
But let me ask you this fundamental question. The women folk, the gender, the female gender, has been under critical spotlight in politics, in this case of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. As a former lawmaker, if this kind of case comes up, what do you think is best? Because as anyone that is above the age of 50 and is in politics and is in governance and is in leadership, will assume some level of reasoning and wisdom in handling this kind of matter.
Yeah.
Don't forget that Senator Godswill Akpabio is a very good friend to Chief Emmanuel Uduaghan, the husband to Senator Akpoti-Uduaghan. There is a family connection. Yeah. There is a friendship that is is in question here. Do you think this matter could have been handled in a better way?
Oh, definitely, because the Senate President is the interpreter of their rules. So in interpreting the rules, you have two obligations. You have to be compassionate, and at the same time, you have to be humanistic. Remember, we are dealing with human beings. And then you must recognize that the world recognizes the endangered nature of female politicians. And that's why you've had affirmative action, you've had the Beijing Declaration. All of this is...
Does it look like Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan stepped out of the line? If there is a rule that you cannot speak if you're not sitting on your chair, even when you have a legitimate reason to protest, and there are cases that the presiding officer himself in the 8th Assembly, we showed a video of how he agitated when he sat in a place where there was no microphone. So he agitated. But shouldn't she have also obeyed first by sitting in the place and then protest later? The case of, say, obey the rules that were made by your own colleagues. Agree to.
No, but don't forget that even in the reallocation of seats, there is a notification. I am aware that text messages are either sent or a publication done. So if you didn't get any and you suddenly come to the Senate on that day and some para-legislative staff I'd say, no, man, you can't stay here. This is where you are going to sit. As a member of the Senate, you are not a slave. Remember that. Part of what qualifies you to remain in the Senate is that you were elected. So the right to speak as a senator is guaranteed. The right to protest is guaranteed. So you cannot be talking about sitting on the seat, which is the subject of action.
We've seen 3 months suspension. We've seen a few months suspension, but this is 6 months. What a lot of Nigerians might not know tonight is that it's not 6 calendar months. It is 6 legislative sitting months, days that we're counting. Meaning that almost 8 months or 9 months.
Oh yeah, it will extend far beyond.
She will be out of work.
Far beyond calendar month.
What do you think of that?
Well, I think what she will be doing, I mean what that means is that a state of the Federal Republic, Kogi State, will be denied the right to equality of representation in the Senate. The Senate is a special body. It's made up of 3 senators per state, regardless of the size of the state. And there's a reason for that. So each time this happens, you deny Kogi State the right to a vote. And so I think that regardless of the political parties to which she may belong, the government of Kogi State should intervene and express a reservation, because it will come to a point where one vote will matter and Natasha will not be there. And that's key. It's key. So that's why it's not just about Natasha. It's about whether or not Kogi State, as a component state of the Federation of Nigeria, is denied a senatorial vote.
How damaging is this for the reputation of the Senate under Godswill Akpabio?
Well, I think the most damaging is the blazing disobedience of court order. It is very untenable for a lawmaking body.
But there are very senior lawyers there. You have the Senate President, who is a lawyer. You have the majority leader, who is also a very respected senior lawyer. And do you think they would have flagrantly disobeyed court orders if they probably had considered something else that you are not seeing? Leonard's sake.
But you know, the truth is, power is an aphrodisiac. Legislation and the business of legislation it smells of power. So sometimes they may oversight the law, in the sense that they are dealing with primary interests which are also underlined politically, whether we like it or not. And politics is about who gets what, how, and when. So if they had made up their mind to suspend this senator, nothing else for them will matter, not even a court order. So their seniority in law will probably not be counted on this occasion. But for us who are outside, who are observing, who are practicing, we will not fail to say no. Before many of them, we were there. So we would tell.
Can this be corrected?
Well, for me, the way to correct it is there are two ways. One, to hold a special session and rescind their decision, or the courts to step in and order and not suspend the senator, because it was done in flagrant disobedience. So once the lawyers file the appropriate action, we know that a mandatory injunction can do this, and I urge these lawyers, our lawyers, to take the move, make the move.
Can Godswill Akpabio fix what has come like a dent on his leadership of the Senate?
Well, that may take some time, but it can carry out immediate emergency repairs, which would be do the right things, win some folks, and then hope over the period, make some good laws for the good governance of our country, work on some real nice policies. Maybe the country.
A lot of women are not happy with him.
It's understandable, because it takes a woman such a long journey to get to the Senate. How many are there?
All right. Honorable West Idahosa, for some good reasons, thank you so much for saying this.
I appreciate
your time.
Thank you,
and the legal knowledge that you've shared with us tonight. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you, brother.
Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Honorable West Idahosa, who will spend some time also in the National Assembly, speaking on the point of law and on the point of experience of the operations of the National Assembly. Someone who is also a part of the framing of the order that has been so much contentious.